Princess Catherine has now revealed her personal battle and why she kept it secret. The Princess of Wales releasing a video a short time ago sharing she has been William and Kate have broken their silence on an explosive royal revelation. Catherine did not simply shed a tear on live television, she collapsed the instant Princess Charlotte placed a classified palace note into her trembling hands. This wasn't stage fright. Charlotte had just exposed a coordinated plot involving Camilla, Princess Diana's memory, and a secret operation never meant for the public. But the most dangerous weapon wasn't what Charlotte said, it was the handwritten sentence she refused to read. The 11:24 broadcast that shattered Kensington Palace's quiet. At morning, the broadcast began calmly at 11 and by the sunken garden at Kensington Palace the air was crisp, the cameras were in place, and the audience of important guests and young representatives settled into their seats. Charlotte was invited to speak about the women who had greatly influenced her life and her understanding of royal duty. Kathy and sat nearby upright and giving a warm, encouraging smile. Prince William watched proudly from the front row. No one in the press or production team expected the speech to go beyond typical family stories and general royal service. Then the unexpected happened. At 11:24 am, Charlotte suddenly stopped speaking. She lowered her prepared pages and reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out a folder document with the unmistakable palace crest. Catherine recognized the thick cream paper and dark ink right away. Her expression shifted from pride to shock. Even before Charlotte spoke again, William leaned forward in his chair, tension gripping his shoulders. A television producer was heard speaking frantically into an earpiece. The room was still trying to understand what was happening, but Catherine knew. Charlotte, with a steady voice full of emotion, told the audience that plans for Princess Diana's 30th anniversary tribute had been secretly and partially changed. Catherine's heartfelt introduction had been completely removed. Charlotte's role had been pushed lower in the ceremony order, effectively sidelining her. A personal remembrance film about Diana had disappeared from the schedule. Charlotte stated that these changes had been made in Camilla household without either William or Catherine approving them. That alone was shocking, but it was not the moment that broke Catherine. A hidden document from Camilla, his office rewrites Diana's legacy. To understand the harsh reality of the moment, we need to look back 8 weeks before Charlotte stepped onto that stage. Catherine sat in a bright planning room, carefully reviewing a folder for the 30th anniversary of Princess Diana's passing. The meeting was meant to be simple, a tribute and a moment of remembrance, but Catherine wanted it to be personal. She spent long days looking through charity records, unseen photos, handwritten notes, and old speeches. She refused to host another cold, impersonal ceremony filled with empty words and polite applause. She wanted warmth, memory, and something real. Her carefully crafted plan included 30 white roses, one for each year since Diana's passing. These flowers were to be placed beside Diana's statue in the sunken garden. Catherine believed this gesture would connect the day back to the everyday people Diana cared for. Next came a short film. It would not have grand music or heavy narration. Instead, it would show raw images of Diana listening, laughing, and kneeling beside sick children. It would highlight her courage and visiting hospitals others avoided. Catherine insisted that the film ignore royal titles and focus entirely on the impact Diana had on people's lives. Charlotte also had an important role in this plan. She would carry the final rose. At first, Catherine was hesitant and protective of her daughter. She didn't want Charlotte to be used as a public symbol too soon. William agreed with this protective stance, so Catherine asked Charlotte privately, away from staff and cameras. Charlotte immediately said yes. She had never met Diana, but she was surrounded by family stories about her inside jokes, Diana's legendary stubbornness, and how she could make formal settings feel less stiff. Everything was going well. The plan was reviewed, the timing was checked, and the security teams had no objections. William and Catherine's household approved the sequence, and the anniversary film was in the final editing stages. Then a new folder arrived. Its title seemed harmless: Ceremonial Harmonization and Protocol Amendments. The bureaucratic language was dry, making it easy to overlook any immediate concerns. The first page mentioned timing adjustments. The second referred vaguely to balancing the various rural households. The third talked about avoiding repeated efforts. The real changes showed up on page 4. Catherine's introduction had been removed entirely. Charlotte's rose placement was reassigned to a generic staff member. The personal Diana film was replaced with a broader segment honoring general women of royal service. Most importantly, the power to grant final approval was taken away from Catherine's team for changes, for cuts. One clear message. Catherine read the page 3 times, hoping for a logical explanation hidden in the formal wording. There was none. Diana's name wasn't erased, as that would have caused immediate outrage. Instead, her powerful presence had been softened and talked into something much safer for the current hierarchy. When Catherine asked who had authorized the changes, the answer came back with caution. The request had come directly from Camilla household. No one made direct accusations. The document had done all the talking. When and protested privately, she received a velvet-wrapped threat. She was told the revised program would better reflect unity. There was an unspoken warning: if Catherine resisted too much, the disagreement could leak to the press. It could be framed as a bitter argument about Diana, or as Catherine using a tragic anniversary to boost her standing beside William. That was the trap. If she fought back, the tribute would turn into a palace feud. If she stayed quiet, her months of hard work would vanish. Catherine chose silence to protect Diana's memory from another public fight, valuing that more than her own pride. 18 days of silence. Charlotte uncovers The palace's cruel trap for silence often leaves signs. 3 weeks before the broadcast, Catherine returned to Adelaide Cottage after another frustrating planning meeting. She entered quietly through the side door, placed her leather folder on a table in the hallway, and stood alone in the dim light for longer than usual. Charlotte, watching from the stairs, saw her. Catherine didn't break down or cry in front of her daughter. Instead, she smiled. Too quickly, her eyes empty, and lightly said the ceremony had just become complicated. Later that evening, Charlotte quietly passed Catherine's private study and noticed the heavy oak door was partly open. On the mahogany desks at the original program, covered with frantic handwritten notes, beside it lay a single, drying white rose from an earlier happy rehearsal. The room was empty. Charlotte cautiously stepped closer. Across Catherine's carefully written introduction was a harsh red line at the bottom of the page someone had written for painful words removed from final program. Charlotte heard footsteps coming and quickly backed away into the shadows before anyone saw her. She said nothing that night, but for the first time she understood. Her mother hadn't changed, and as tribute by choice, someone powerful had maliciously taken it from her. 18 days before the live broadcast, a folder read Charlotte. Unexpectedly, it arrived mixed in with her usual papers for the Royal Youth Legacy Forum hidden beneath her own speech draft. The folder had a cream card, an official palace crest, and a neat row ribbon tied around it. Charlotte opened it alone in her room after dinner. Most of the material was painfully familiar: the timing, seating charts, and notes on exactly where to stand and when to move. Then a folded sheet slipped out from between 2 pages and landed softly on the floor near her chair. It was clearly not meant for her. The heading used the same dry bureaucratic language Catherine had seen weeks earlier, but this copy was dangerously different. It was marked with handwritten notes and initials at the bottom, along with a restricted circulation code. Charlotte read the First Amendment and saw her name crossed out next to the final rose placement. She read the Second Amendment and noted that Catherine's detailed introduction had been cut down to 2 generic sentences. In the Third Amendment, the emotional film about Diana's charity work was completely removed. Charlotte did not know all the rules of protocol, but she understood enough to realize that someone had intentionally dismantled the beautiful ceremony. Her mother had carefully created a handwritten note in the margin chillingly referred to maintaining proper distance between future representatives and past emotionless occasions. Charlotte read that disturbing sentence twice: future representatives, past emotional associations. It sounded chillingly polished and felt cruel. She turned the heavy page and noticed another disturbing note in darker ink. The bottom part of the page was folded inward as if to hide a final thought. When she opened it carefully, she found that Catherine was now not to have final approval. Charlotte's carefully rehearsed place was to be reassigned. The entire Diana segment would be brought under the Queen's household control. Beneath those rigid instructions was a venomous handwritten line that made Charlotte freeze. It read, "Diana must not be allowed to." The satin stopped abruptly. With a fold had torn across the page, Charlotte stared at the jagged good paper. In that moment, everything clicked together: the hollow smile on Catherine's face, the abandoned rose, the cancelled rehearsal, and the way William had gone quiet whenever the anniversary program came up. This was not just an administrative change, it was a warning. For 3 long nights, Charlotte said nothing during the day. She watched her mother. Catherine bravely attended meetings, politely answered questions, and smiled through demanding public appearances, but her small actions revealed her pain. Catherine stopped mentioning the tribute film and avoided Charlotte's questions about the rose ceremony. Once she slammed the program shut when Charlotte entered the room. Finally, Charlotte confronted her mother, asking, "Did someone force you to give up the tribute?" Catherine didn't answer right away. She looked out the Rain Street window and told Charlotte that royal duty sometimes meant accepting unfair decisions. Charlotte asked if this made the decision right. Catherine whispered no. That honest word changed everything for Charlotte. She realized her mother was in pain and was trying to protect the very people who caused that pain. Charlotte kept the torn page hidden, wanting to understand who wrote the unfinished hateful line. The initials on the document indicated a senior office within Camilla household. This connection was threatening. A glowing tribute to Diana, beautifully introduced by Catherine and completed by Charlotte, would create a powerful image that palace protocol could not control. Diana's memory would connect directly from William to Catherine and then to the next generation through Charlotte. Though Camilla would hold the ultimate title, Diana would hold the moment. Someone recognized this reality and feared it, deciding to push Catherine and Charlotte away from the spotlight before the cameras arrived. If someone tried to silence Catherine and push young Charlotte aside to protect their ego, would you support them? Write yes in the comments if you stand with Catherine and Charlotte. Please don't just sit there while their loyalty is used against. Like, subscribe to Palace Beacon and share this important story. The unread sentence, a deliberate attempt to erase Catherine's power. Silence had allowed the plot to grow dangerously. On the morning of the forum, Charlotte carefully folded a troubling note and tucked it into the silk pocket of her dark coat. At Kensington Palace, Catherine lovingly adjusted Charlotte's collar, unaware of the explosive information her daughter was carrying. At 11:18 am, Charlotte approached the wooden lectern. She started her speech as planned for the first few minutes. Then she turned to Catherine and spoke passionately about a mother who always thought of the marginalized people others overlooked. Catherine smiled proudly. The audience applauded enthusiastically. The speech should have ended there, but it did not. Charlotte put her prepared speech aside and declared that silence had caused too much pain.
Catherine's smile faded as Charlotte revealed a note at 11:24 and making the audience gasp. Despite Catherine's urgent pleas, Charlotte insisted on speaking out. She said her mother had protected the family by staying silent, but they had failed to protect her. The atmosphere changed dramatically as Charlotte, trembling, approached Catherine and handed her the note. Catherine's eyes scanned the words, stopping at the jagged handwriting. She gasped and tears fell as she realized Charlotte understood the painful truth she had carried for 18 days. Charlotte announced she wouldn't read a specific line aloud to spare her mother further hurt. William noticed the folded edge of the page. Unbeknownst to them, a master copy containing the full sentence sat in an archive after the broadcast. William ordered all related documents to be locked down. Meanwhile, Camilla household claimed it was just a harmless draft, a claim Princess Anne was ready to challenge. Princess Anne discovers the missing archive file, exposing the truth. A heavy oak door slammed shut behind the royal family at 11:41 am. Outside, reporters shouted frantic questions in the cobblestone courtyard inside the private quarters. The noise gave way to a thick tension. Catherine stood by a narrow window, tightly holding a folded note. William quickly asked everyone, including senior staff, to leave the room. William reached out his tense hand. Catherine silently handed him the note. He did not read it. As a worried husband, he looked at it like an investigator searching for the moment when a false story fell apart. He first noticed the secure circulation code, then the digital timestamp, and finally the damning initials. The note was created 6 full days after the original program was finalized. This fact destroyed the simplest lie. It could not have been an early innocent proposal. It was created maliciously. Long after the tribute was settled, at 11:49 am, William urgently called his private secretary. He ordered that all records related to the anniversary program be legally preserved. Draft emails, server access logs, digital version histories, handwritten notes, and even crumpled papers and wastebaskets were to remain untouched. William was blocking any escape route before the wrongdoers even realized they needed one. 12 minutes later, Camilla, his office, claimed the controversial note was merely a working document from an early discussion and didn't represent a final decision. William slammed the note on the table, pointing to its late time stamp, leaving no one to answer. By mid-afternoon, officials labeled the circulation number a printing error, and the handwriting was attributed to a junior planner. When Princess Anne arrived, she demanded the master document index and examined the restricted circulation code. She found that Charlotte's copy belonged to the 4th highly restricted distribution sequence, an alarming revelation, and asked about the 3rd and 4th sequence master files, and was led to a secure archive there. She discovered a duplicate security folder containing another key. Yeah, a copy of the harmful order, complete with the same removals and a senior approval mark and a later timestamp. Returning to William's office and placed both pages on the table. The first was torn, the second clean, revealed the full and disturbing instruction. This was not a discussion, this was an instruction, she stated coldly. William, visibly angry, noted that the handwriting would be checked and the server logs would reveal who accessed the archive to steal the missing folder. Until every name was revealed, no one from Camilla's household would have access to the Diana program again. William's retribution, a line is drawn to protect Diana's true heirs. The room was quiet after William finished reading. Catherine didn't ask to see the sentence again. She understood enough from the way William folded the page, from the way and jaw tightened with disgust, and from the way everyone connected to Camilla's household chose their words carefully. William unfolded the main document and read it out loud. The key line said, Anna must not be allowed to eclipse the Queen again. Remove Catherine's tribute and keep the girl away from the center. The term the girl felt dismissive. It didn't mention Princess Charlotte by her title or her connection to William or Diana. This phrase changed the meaning of everything that had happened before. The schedule change was no longer just a simple issue. It showed a real fear that Diana's memory could overshadow the royal family through Catherine and Charlotte. Catherine looked at her daughter. Charlotte didn't know the final sentence. She had only seen the beginning of a damaged copy. Now she understood why the final version was hidden and why Catherine kept the last secret. Catherine was not just moved down a list. First, she was pushed away from her family's legacy. William asked who wrote the controversial line, but no one answered. Camilla, as representatives, wanted to verify the handwriting, and William agreed, but the ceremony could not wait. He reinstated Catherine's introduction and moved Charlotte back to her spot beside the final rose, putting Diana's charity film back in the program. He and Catherine had the final say in Princess and stressed that future changes must be recorded with names for accountability, closing the loophole that had allowed changes to be made anonymously. After the officials left, Catherine comforted a tearful Charlotte, who felt alone after trying to solve a major issue for 18 days. Catherine reassured her that true courage sometimes means trusting the right people and knowing when to speak. Charlotte worried that her outburst had disappointed Catherine, but Catherine told her that the real shame lay with those who chose silence over justice. William watched their embrace while and stood nearby with a master record. The evidence revealed a struggle over memory and the monarchy's future, showing that Catherine would no longer accept humiliation while Charlotte would find her voice. Camilla, his office, denied that the harmful line represented her true wishes, but the damage was already done. William held the damaging pages, and now Charlotte had public attention while Catherine no longer carried her pain alone.